We are now joined by David Stelzer from Xsolla. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thank
Fantastic.
you.
We have spoken to Xsolla in the past. I won't make you do the full recount, but just the one sentence slug line. What are you folks all about?
We are all about empowering developers to have that direct relationship with their game player and consumer and to be able to keep more of their money.
Excellent. Now, I was reading up, you guys did a state of play last year, the first of your kind. I think another one is due to come maybe in March sometime. But one of the things I took away from it was that we all acknowledged that in 2023, a bit of a difficult year for the industry. And 2024 was all about hopefully bouncing back and being a bit more optimistic. Now we're actually 1 foot into that year. Are we still feeling that way? How optimistic are we?
Yeah, very much so. I think we saw at the end of 23 privacy restrictions, IDFA from Apple, things that were making it really difficult for game makers to actually be able to do proper UA, have a communication with the game players that they had, and really making it hard to blow a game up. So Xsolla's got a product that kind of leans into that a bit, and then as we get into 24, you got recent rulings from Google, you got recent ruling with Apple, and that's going to allow more of the commerce to be able to happen off of the Apple stores and the Google stores, so that there's a direct-to-consumer relationship. And this is what we call web shop.
You're going to do a talk about that later, aren't you?
Yeah,
So
I have
what's
a
the
talk
general
today at
gist?
3:30 about the importance of web shops. And the web shop allows you to have this relationship with the game player where you're able to sell them items directly through the web shop. You're able to interact with them. You're able to share the data points with them and get to know who these players are. And the players then have a better, closer relationship with the game as well. And as a result, you're not paying the 30% that you would pay to Apple or Google by doing this.
I know that when the app stores initially kicked off, there were lots of people who did their own independent ones. For instance, Samsung had their own one. They were quite bullish on it. And there's a lot of independent Android markets. Is it tricky to be able to compete with something as large as the App Store and survive outside of that ecosystem, do you think?
So you're not surviving outside of it, and you're not really competing with them. Your game still lives on the App Store. You're still promoting your game through the App Store. But what you're hoping to do is bring some of that commerce off of the App Store so that you can have the relationship with your customer. There's going to be things that organically happen still through the App Store, quick, inexpensive transactions. But as developers want to give, better offerings to their customers, give them the ability to have larger packs of gems or things that they might not be able to get through the app stores, they're going to be able to know that they can get these things on the company's web page store. And from there, they'll start to develop a place and a bit of muscle memory as to being able to go back to the web store and knowing that these offerings exist and they can get the best of the items that they want. But if they want a quick fix, they can still go and do that from the traditional stores.
There's likely to be a dip in VC investment this year. We're anticipating fewer games being made over the course of the year. How does that affect the way that you folks would do business? If there's fewer games being created, potentially fewer clients, is it about retaining the existing and making the most out of them? Or
I think like with any business where you have, if growth actually slows in terms of new companies coming to market, then you look to work more deeply with the companies that are already in market. So how can we take those companies that are in market, give them more of the Xsolla product to work with than what they may be working with now, show them ways to expand the reach of what they're using within those products so that they can make more money. And it's actually good for them at some point. It's a little harder for us because it becomes, as you said, a smaller market. But for the people who are making games, it's a little less competition. So if we can show them how to leverage what they have and then work within that smaller pool of competition, they can actually do really well. In return, as a payment processor or as a web shop owner for them, being their merchant of record, we'll earn well as well. But our philosophy is that we want to empower these game developers to have the best tools and be able to make the best games, and we'll all benefit as a result of that.
what about UA? All the focus is often put on acquisition and then maybe the churn, but what about keeping existing users engaged or re-engaging users that maybe have dropped off a bit? That's a different kind of challenge. How do you tackle that?
And again, I'm going to keep harping on this, but on the traditional storefronts where that data doesn't come back to you, it's really hard because you're putting money into UA, but you're not getting the information back that you're used to. And so it becomes more like advertising on traditional media like television or radio. You're you're advertising to a demographic as opposed to a key group of players. And again, by having these web shops and starting to have this relationship and building off the store, you can not just promote the one game, but you can promote multiple games. You can have a network effect, and then you get all the data from those transactions. So the more that you put towards what's going into these web shops and the more that you can engage the player there, the more you're going to know about them, the more effective money spends you're going to have, the higher LTVs that you're going to see as a result of that. Plus, for every dollar that they're spending, it's a dollar that you're keeping as opposed to having to give that 30% back to the stores.
Gotcha. Well, we talked about AI a lot last year, and it was in the generative stuff was just hitting the mainstream. Now it's out there, and there's been, I guess, a little bit of suspicion about it, and the threats of people losing their jobs to it. Some of that started to materialize a little bit with what Google is doing. Now, you folks have always used or been using ML for a long time, which is a form of AI, but not the generative kind. Are you worried about anyone turning around and pointing the finger and go, you use all the AI, you're one of the bad ones? Or are there new things coming from the generative side that can actually be employed in addition?
I think the types of AI that are good for our industry and are helpful, that don't run into the issues like generative AI, people get concerned about the legalities around it, copyright, trademark, all of these things. As we look at the helper type of things, that's where I think that the machine learning AI piece is actually decent. Things that can help developers make better decisions in their processes as they're talking to their consumers. What kinds of data are they getting back? How can that data be analyzed to make better choices within that? That's more the machine learning side rather than they're not using it to generate the ads or to generate pieces of game or anything like that feel a bit contrived.
And do people get a little bit suspicious of the black box of it all? Certainly with ML, it's doing an awful lot of calculations behind the scenes, and then it spits out some information, and you kind of have to some degree, go with it, trust the process. When you deal with your clients and customers, what's the thing that they ask for most in terms of transparency, or is it more data points?
I think we try to be as transparent as possible with these processes. The customers want to know what it is that we're giving them. They want to know how we're getting to our results, and transparency, I think, is really important for that.
Makes sense. And what about you doing the talk later on, shows like this or coming to these kind of conferences in general? What's the benefit for you folks? Is it about meeting the competition, meeting the clients? What's the aim?
It's exposure, making sure that everybody knows the Xsolla brand, obviously, the Xsolla solutions and products that go with it, and then keeping people informed about what is newest within the industry. So web shops today is the talk. It's going to be the area that we think has the most growth for this year. It's going to be the thing that brings in more revenue for customers who are having trying times coming out from last year. And as we get towards GDC, we'll have more to announce with more products, but that's kind of where we're headed this year, is to bring more and more products to market that will help developers retain more of the money, have better relationships with customers, and help developers to put out great games.
Well, I look forward to seeing how that shakes out. David, thank you for talking to me.
Thank you.